starting all over again. It's gonna be rough on us, but we're gonna make it. It's Breakfast with Bob.
Joe Man. Thanks for leading us off. Welcome to Not Quite Kona Breakfast with Bob. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Hoka One One, by Credo Tri, Four Seasons Hualalai, Challenge Daytona Form Goggles, Canyon Bikes, Normatec, Ampuman, VeloFix You Can, and of course our Challenged Athletes Foundation. One of my favorite people of all time joins us now. 2010 Ironman World Championship finisher, and that is just the beginning of the story. Mr. Clayton Treska joins us. Clayton, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Bob, how are you? It's good to see you. Doing good. Yeah, doing good.
So, 290-pound Marine, feel you're, indestructible.
Yeah.
And then you find out you've got testicular cancer.
That's right. Yeah. Yep, that's right.
And what year was that?
That was 2009. 2008 was the first diagnosis, and 2009 was the second one.
And when you get diagnosed, all of a sudden you start changing life a little bit. You start getting into this swim, bike, and run thing. When you were a kid, you always thought one day you would do an Ironman, but then your back is hurting.
That's right.
And you go to see the doctors, and what do they tell you?
Yeah. So the first diagnosis was in 2008. It was an outpatient chemotherapy regimen. I wanted to show my family that I'm strong and that I can overcome anything, and so I started in its infancy to train for triathlon. Not really getting into the actual swimming, but just getting in good shape. And so while I was doing that training, I started that after I finished my first bout of cancer, and then I was having these, as you were saying, these pains in my lower back. Going to the oncologist and doing my checkups, thinking that just to make sure that we're okay. Everyone kind of assumed that it was just from overtraining, but in reality, the remission had failed, and the cancer was actually spreading through my whole body, through my torso, my chest, throughout my lymphatic system. It was a pretty tough day. It was a pretty tough diagnosis.
And stage 4. Basically given death sentence.
That's correct. Yeah. It was interesting. I was just talking about this yesterday. Is that every doctor is kind of limited to the scope of their understanding of what capabilities there are to treat a disease. And so my oncologist at that time was under the impression that there was nothing that could save my life. That's correct.
So I remember meeting you for the first time. We were at Tri Club of San Diego. I was interviewing Chris Carmichael, Lance's coach. And in scanning the audience, there's a guy who looked like death warmed over, with his eyes sunk in the back of his head, with a surgical mask on. Nowadays, you'd fit right in.
Yeah.
But back then, you're wearing a surgical mask. You stuck out like a sore thumb, and you looked horrific.
Yeah.
But you were coming to meet Chris, and you told us your story about you were trying to hook up with Lance's doctor, Lawrence Einhorn. Right. To see if he could help you. And you ended up hooking up with Dr. Einhorn, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And he recommended a treatment that's done only a handful of places in the world. And one of them is in Indiana, where he is at. And then the other place is in Southern California at the University of California, San Diego. And so you can imagine like how incredibly blessed we felt in those multiple degrees of separation. It really is a small world when it comes to cancer. And so I applied for to get treatment at UCSD, and thankfully enough they accepted me. It was a really aggressive form of treatment. It's called a tandem autologous tandem bone marrow transplant or stem cell transplant. And what it is, it's the process of giving you a lethal dosage of chemotherapy, not once, but twice, and then harvesting stem cells from your body to infuse into your body when you start dying from the treatment, so your body can rescue itself. Really aggressive form of treatment, but they felt that I was young enough and I was healthy enough, thank goodness for all that training I was doing prior, to survive the treatment. So that's the route that we went.
Meanwhile, you get this diagnosis. There's a baseball-sized tumor on your clavicle.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's a good chance you're going to die, you're given like 18 months to live, you sign up for Ironman 70.3 Hawaii, which is typical, right? Somebody tells you you're going to die, you're going, well, I might as well sign up for a 70.3 because, you know, after I'm dead, it won't hurt that much when I go to do that race. It won't really be a problem.
Very true.
What the hell was going on in your mind when you're like, okay, I'm given this diagnosis, I'm going to die. I'm going to sign up for something that probably I can't do.
You know what, man? I think it's a human element. I think it was back against the wall. You know, life couldn't get any worse. Since I'm going to die, I might as well die on my own terms, and to pursue what I always wanted to pursue, which you mentioned earlier, that, you know, I wanted to be an Ironman since I was a kid. It was on my bucket list. And we talk about, you know, what's on your bucket list. Well, this is what a more opportune time, you know, to pursue your bucket listers than when you're about to kick the bucket. So it made sense to me. And also in a more kind of, you know, down to earth perspective, it was also my way of keeping my family positive, focusing on something other than the fact that I'm dying of cancer. And it worked. It kept it instead of every day worrying about, you know, how sick I am or how much time I have left on this earth. It was a conversation about how are we going to learn to swim? How are we going to learn to bike? Let's see if we can connect with this coach or that coach. Let's research nutrition. I mean, because I had never done triathlon up to that point. I'd never done a race. I was still in my life. So it was really cool to see everybody rally around and just be positive about something in the midst of a lot of darkness, you know?
Well,
yeah.
What was the lowest moment for you?
Oh gosh. There are a couple of them. I'd probably have to say, you know, one of the lowest was the challenge, the challenge that my family had to face and had to endure. You know, it's kind of like when you're on the race course as a triathlete, you know, there's no doubt that these triathletes are seasoned and trained and professionals at what they do. And you don't really, you know, just start a race. You train up for it. But when you're out there, I don't think anybody really understands the pain that you're going through, the physical pain, the heat, the exhaustion. And it's kind of the same way when you're going through cancer, is that nobody really understands the amount of pain that you're going through physically and emotionally while you're getting all these rounds of chemotherapy or radiation treatment. And so seeing the worry, you know, on my mother's face and on my father's face, you know, times when I'm in my hospital room and I get up and I can't walk 4 feet without falling to the ground, and seeing my mom or my dad or my friends so worried for me, that was definitely a low point for sure. I mean, it's interesting because I have this analogy that, you know, I'm a firm believer that if you can fight cancer, you can be an endurance athlete and vice versa. And so I didn't really realize it at the time, but going through that process of weeks and months of cancer treatment, it was really kind of preparing me for what it was going to be like to train for the Ironman. And so even in the midst of, like, you know, all these low points, you can still find a silver lining and know that this is almost preparing me for what was to come.
So you went from 290 pounds to 155. I'm telling people I'm doing Ironman while I'm lying in bed in a diaper. Your mile is basically 36 laps around the nurse's station with your IV stand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you went over to do Ironman 70.3, I think you had over 20 members of Team Treska that joined you, but you basically told the people at the hospital, because you were still in the hospital. It's not like you said, hey, you basically said, hey, I'm just going to go to Hawaii. You didn't tell them you're doing a freaking 70.3 race.
Yeah, that's correct. It was one of those things that's kind of like, I don't want you to put you in the position for you to say no, because I'm going to do it anyways. So I'm just going to do it anyways. And I'm not recommending that anybody should do that, but that was the approach that I had at the time. And you know, in hindsight, when they found out, you know, that I checked myself out to go do this, it was bittersweet, because I mean, like, I think everybody is just happy for the fact that I wasn't succumbing to my disease, literally and figuratively speaking, and that I was just going after life. But they do realize, like, I got kind of a scolding. They were like, you know, it wasn't a great idea to do that at that time. But still at the same time, pats on the back for doing it. It's kind of cool.
I have a photo here on the wall of you on the golf course running in that race, and you look strong. You look powerful. You know, and I think there's something about the psychological side of that certainly helped you overcome this disease.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, everybody has that different thing that they lean on, whether it's family, whether it's pride, whether it's their faith, whether it's their purpose. I think that, you know, when I was in the hospital, I'll back up a little bit. You know, when I was in the hospital, I started receiving like these letters from people, like saying that, you know, and messages on social media saying that what I was doing was inspiring. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I know you've heard this plenty of times, Bob, and anybody else that's listening, like when you hear those words, like you're an inspiration, I mean, it's absolutely life-changing, you know? And so what that did for me was it gave me purpose. It gave me purpose that, like, you know, I want to help people. I want to not just inspiring people, but help people in any way that I possibly can. And the endeavor turned into not just becoming an Ironman, not just supporting my family and friends, but doing this for all the patients that are still in the hospital, that are still suffering from their own cancers and going through their own treatments. So it became larger than myself. And I'll tell you what, I mean, like, you know, to find a purpose in life is the greatest gift that I've ever received. And I would wish that upon all human beings. It's life and the future and your purpose and what you're going to be doing with your time becomes much more clear.
So when you go to, then after you finish 70.3, now you're in the Big Daddy. Now you got to go twice as far, right?
Yeah.
So in October 2010, you're out there 15 hours.
Yeah.
And you end up finishing the toughest one-day event on the planet.
Yeah.
And there's a message there, right? Here I was, a year and a half ago with stage 4 and a death sentence, and now I'm finishing the toughest race on earth. How did that change you?
Oh gosh, I mean, like, you know, I've never really been a crier, an emotional person. But when I crossed that finish line, I mean, it just overcome with emotions. You were there, you remember, I just broke down. I just broke down. It changed me because it made me realize that everything that I have ever been through in my entire life, every struggle, every pain, every moment of suffering, every challenge, everything that I have ever faced had prepared me for that day, to be there on that day and to see it through to the very end. And if anything would have been different, if a less challenging, less of a hardship, less of a struggle, I might not have been strong enough to see it through to the end. And so it made sense to me, and the purpose aspect of it, but it also made sense when people ask yourselves, and I think a lot of people ask themselves, you know, why does life have to be so challenging? Why does it have to be so hard? You'll find, if you don't know today, you'll find out. And that day I found out why it needed to be that challenging, is so I could be strong enough, and we could be strong enough, you know, to experience that day and to see it through. And as far as how it changed my life, it made me realize that, you know, and I've always advocated this, is that I'm not special. I wasn't an endurance athlete for sure, you know that.
Yeah.
But it made me realize, like, you know, there's a logic behind what I was able to accomplish and what we were able to accomplish, and there's no reason why other people can't accomplish that themselves. We all have our own Ironmans that we're overcoming, whether it be an actual Ironman or just a challenge in life. And I wanted to, since then, moving forward, I wanted to figure out a way in order to be able to help other people so they can overcome their own adversities, whether it be clinical or non-clinical or emotional or life challenges. And I've been doing that ever since.
I know. Watching you kiss that finish line,
yeah,
that was like the coolest thing ever. A lot of people do push-ups and jump up and touch the clock, but watching you get down on all fours, and it was almost like symbolizing the end of one journey and the beginning of another.
That's a carryover from like deployments in the Marines, you know, when we would when we would hit American soil and a deployment would be over, I would always drop to the knees and kiss the tarmac. You know, just being grateful for the fact that I'm back in the States alive. And so it was the same thing, like, you know, getting to the end of that journey. Well, it's really kind of the beginning of a new journey. Just showing my appreciation that we were able to get to that point, because it was, what a journey that was. Yeah.
Well, and look what your journey's been since. You get your MBA.
Yeah.
You got your own business now, and
Yeah.
more importantly, you went back to UCSD to be on the other side to
That's
help
correct.
that next person. And I think the pictures of your transformation were above the scale at
Yeah.
UCSD, basically to give people hope and to give them an opportunity to see what can happen if you hang in there.
That's right. At the at the Moores Cancer Center at UCSD, there's an infusion center which has all the chairs where the patients come in to do chemotherapy. And the first thing you do before you go in to receive your chemo is you get weighed, and there's a weigh station. And so right above the weigh station is my picture of me going through cancer and me running the Ironman and finishing the Ironman and my Ironman medal and my bib. So people who are, you know, going before they go into treatment realize, like, you know, there is hope. It might, I mean, today you're sick, you might not feel good, and you're fighting cancer, but there is hope. And hope is a very, very powerful thing in the face of that type of adversity and challenge.
So, and the company that you've created is called what?
Family Proud. And so, yeah, it's on familyproud.com, one word. And it's a patient resource alignment tool that you can download to your phone. And when you're hospitalized and going through treatment, you know, you're using Facebook for one thing, you're using Amazon, you're using Instagram, you're using all these different tools or all these different applications in order to be able to help advocate for yourself and keep people informed. And so what we have done is we have consolidated all of those types of capabilities underneath one umbrella, with the extra added capability of connecting you with other people who are going through the same challenge. So if you are a testicular cancer patient or a breast cancer patient, you can connect directly with other cancer patients or other breast cancer or testicular cancer patients of the same age, the same gender, and have conversations with them. It's a peer-to-peer opportunity where you can reach out to other people and find out what they're doing to help themselves, how they are able to manage or mitigate their treatments and their challenges. Because in the game of dealing with health challenges, information is power. And so we want to make sure that we empower everybody who's going through any type of health complication. It's going really well. It's exciting to be able to take advocacy into the digital frame and empowering people so they can successfully manage their own care.
Love it. Hey, Clayton, thank you for taking time and sharing your journey. Has been spectacular. I love being there, watching every aspect of it, going to the hospital and seeing you there and just seeing where you are now.
Yeah.
And it is a miracle.
I so appreciate you, Bob.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of
Thank
it's
you
a
so
miracle.
much.
I love having you part of our world, buddy. Thank you so much for everything you do.
I'm honored, Bob. Thank you for everything you do too, man. You're a family for life. Thank you.
Clayton Treska has been our guest again. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you soon.